The Iran-Israel war has now entered its 8th day. The death toll is mounting and there is no diplomatic breakthrough just as yet. More than 50 fighter jets attacked selected targets of the nuclear weapons program and industrial sites for production of missile components in Tehran overnight. They also struck several Iranian missile systems and radar installations in areas of Isfahan and Tehran. In fact, the Israeli Air Force continue to operate freely in Iranian skies, striking military targets of the Iranian regime in the western and central parts of Iran.
מאז שהתחלנו אותו, זה מבצע שנראה קרוב אבל הוא רחוק, הוא 1,500 קילומטר מגבולות ישראל, עד 2,000 קילומטר. אנחנו מעמיקים את הפגיעה ונמשיך לפגוע בה. יש לנו עוד מטרות רבות לפגוע בהם. המבצע הזה נערכנו להמשכיות שלו. ככל שאנחנו מעמיקים את הפגיעה, אנחנו מאפשרים לעצמנו עוד מרווח ואפשור של המבצע לאורך זמן. נמשיך לפעול לאורך זמן, עד שנעמוד ביעדי המבצע.
And in retaliation, Iran has now fired 30 missiles at Israel and struck the Dimona Nuclear Research Center in Israel. Israel had launched, remember, Operation Rising Lion on 13th of June, and after the surprise attack on Iran, and Iran further retaliated with Operation True Promise 3. This direct military confrontation has seen Israel using fighter jets and drone strikes across Iran, targeting their nuclear and military sites, including surface-to-surface missile production facilities and detecting radar sites, as well as surface-to-air missile launchers, in order to stop Iran from making a nuclear bomb. And since then, there's been tit-for-tat strikes. Both have been hitting each other. As the war seems to be now intensifying, with both countries unwilling to back down, what seems to be a worrying factor is the possibility of war going nuclear or strikes on nuclear facilities triggering a nuclear fallout. Adding to that is the US angle. US now mulling over military strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. President Donald Trump has approved plans to attack Iran but has not made a final decision on whether to strike the country just as yet. This is what Donald Trump said.
I may do it, I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction, why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country.
Iran has said that all options are now on the table in case of US intervention, and that it will strike at the US bases as well across the Middle East if the US intervenes.
حد زده میشد که در این حرکت خباثت آمیز رژیم صهیونیستی آمریکا هم دخالت داره. با این حرفای اخیری که اینها میزنن این هست روز به روز تقویت میشه. ملت ایران در مقابل جنگ تحمیلی محکم میایسته، همچنانی که تا حالا ایستاده. در مقابل صلح تحمیلی محکم میایسته. ملت ایران در مقابل تحمیل تسلیم هیچ کس نمیشه.
And then Russia comes in. Russia has already warned of catastrophic development should the US use a tactical weapon. As per the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, the world is millimeters away from a catastrophe should the US join Israel in striking nuclear facilities in Iran.
Хотели бы особо предостеречь Вашингтон от военного вмешательства в ситуацию, что стало бы крайне опасным шагом с поистине непредсказуемыми негативными последствиями.
In fact, Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered a forceful message declaring that Moscow has and will support Iran. China is also supporting Iran. Pakistan has come out in support of Iran and urged Muslim countries to unite against Israel, even as the US and Pakistani surveillance planes fly on the Pakistan-Iran border. On the other side is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said that Israel is not ruling out eliminating Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as that would end the forever war that Iran wants. And on the 8th day of the war, with both sides not backing down, we see two sides taking shape. The question we are asking is this slowly becoming a world war? And will the US join the war or continue to help Israel? And will the Muslim world unite to support Iran? And would this mean that Shia-Sunni divide be kept aside if this were to happen, if at all? And how can this war be stopped, and who and what will stop it? Let me quickly introduce our guest. Joining me is Ambassador Jandas Gupta, former Indian diplomat. Also with us is Major General V.K. Duta. He's a defense and geopolitical expert. And also on the show is Robinder Sachdev, a foreign affairs expert and president of the Image India Institute. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out for joining us here on Unmissable. I want to come to you first. Major General V.K. Duta, the recent developments that have come by the way of Iran further escalating the fight when it comes to the ongoing escalations between the two countries, the use of cluster munitions that we saw overnight is in contravention to what is now believed to be the geopolitics as well as the rules of war, which have been on now for a while. What does it really mean? What sort of implication does it have geopolitically as well as legally? And would this also mean now that Israel is going to retaliate perhaps by using similar munitions which are not allowed?
Sweta, I'll very quickly go back to a little bit of background. 7 of October 2023. Who started the war? Hamas attacking Israeli civilians, killing, mutilating, and raping women and carrying back hostages. That is 7 October 2020. Who instigated that? Who was behind that? Who was standing behind Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi, and even in Syria, the group? It was Iran. It was Iran and its proxies which started this entire episode, which we are now seeing culminating into a direct one-to-one between Israel and Iran. Now I'll say that all international rules, regulations, and ethos and ethics were thrown to the dust on 7th of October 2023, when by proxy Israel was attacked without any reason, without any provocation. Now Israel has been trying to decimate Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah. They have already almost put them down, and there's been an agreement. Syria, of course, there's been a regime change, and Houthis have been stuck even by the US and the Israelis to quite a large extent. And now comes the turn of Israel versus Iran, because that is the head of the Hydra, which is Israel had to hit, because that was the end point. And now the Israeli aim was that to make sure that Iran is not able to produce a nuclear device, and also to maybe try and attempt a regime change. But more than the regime change, they want to decimate the capability of Iran to not be able to produce a nuclear device. Now that is a question mark. The question mark is, while Israel is striking military targets, their leadership, their nuclear scientists, Iran in turn is targeting civilian targets, residential areas, hospitals. Now that is where the entire international community has to give it a thought. Who started it? What are they doing? What are they attempting to? And mind you, while we are only seeing a clash between Israel and Iran at the moment, America is still mulling over whether it should join in. Russia giving warning, China supporting, Iran sending in weapons. And another factor, Iran is not a small country. It is a very large country, old civilization. They fought an 8-year war with Iraq when number of people were supporting Iraqis and Iran was on one side. So let's not underestimate Iran. And let's not also underestimate Israel.
And I want to talk about Iran in just a minute from now. Let me also quickly get in Ambassador Jandas Gupta. Ambassador, we're talking about civilian casualties, sir. Both Iran and Israel are claiming civilian casualties. Who, according to you, could be the players that can really stop the war? Because it's entered its 8th day. There is a deadlock that continues. US is undecided at the moment. Will take about 2 more weeks. Who could be a player, that formidable player that could perhaps really calm things down in the Middle East? And more importantly, what could be the terms at which Iran and Israel may finally give in?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. But I think at this present juncture, none of the three top military powers, whether it is the US or China or Israel or Russia, has the domination or ability to prevent this war from going any further. Having said that, the US still has a lot of influence over Israel because Israel depends on the US support, tacit or explicit, to carry out its attacks, some of which, on the Iranian nuclear facilities, including those meant for peaceful purposes, which are against international law. So, if the US were to assert its authority over Israel behind the scenes and say that enough is enough, now you must desist. And at the same time, wisdom prevails on the Iranians to come to the negotiating table because this is not the way it is going to get solved. Uh, Attacks will take place and there will be collateral damage or civilian casualties. Today, I think the Israelis are claiming that hospital has been hit by the Iranian missiles. Now, the reporters have not been allowed to go near that site because there is apparently a nuclear facility close to that hospital, which has also been hit, perhaps.
Right.
That is the conjecture. So, today in Geneva, UK, Germany, France, and the EU representatives have met the Iranians to try to work out some kind of a feasible negotiated end or ceasefire to this present conflict. Now, the Iranians have their backs to the wall. Their air defense systems are in tatters. Today, I think, or last night, the Israelis sent about 50 warplanes, and they have hit the missile manufacturing capabilities, the missile launching centers of Iran. So Iran is at the receiving end, but it will have to be given some kind of an honorable exit. And to say that, we will kill Khamenei and we will want a regime
So
change.
I think that
and
the question
forever-
therefore is what's
Yeah.
an honorable exit? At this point, what
That
could
is-
be an honorable exit? Khamenei is not backing down anytime soon. I think he's made his intentions very clear. In fact, also so far as going to issue threats that if US intervenes, we are going to bomb their naval bases. Robinder Sachdev, I think the question that all foreign affairs experts today, any person with any remote sense of trying to bring in peace in the growing hostilities in the Middle East would be asking is, what would it take for Iran to back down? It's not backing down, it has no intentions of backing down.
I mean, a great question. Honestly, I think the answer is perhaps all across. But let's say, what would it take for the war to stop or for the hostilities to cease or the conflict to cease? Even that is not, I mean, the probability is low of that also right now. But yes, as one of our esteemed colleagues was saying, the only one who could bring about some change in this is without doubt the United States. The United States is providing air defense cover to Israel. Whatever missiles that Iran is shooting, about 10% of them are getting through into Israel. That's what we are seeing, the demonstrations. But that's coming after the defensive layers of the US and British and then the Israeli systems. And secondly, the US provides over $4 billion annually for defense budget of Israel. Israel has a defense budget of over $24 billion. The US gives an additional $4 billion. And plus as well, the weapons, the interceptors and all. So the US does have good amount of leverage in this right now. It depends how much is it willing or will be able to use it, because for the US to use its leverage, that's where the domestic politics comes up of the United States. So as of now, it's, I think, pretty difficult to say as to how Iran would back down or Israel would cease the attacks, neither of which seems to be happening in the near term. Israel is continuing with its air attacks. But remember one more thing, General Duta would maybe absolutely be the right guy to say, no war has been won solely by air power. So Israel will, yes, damage Iran to a large extent. And as far as the question of regime change is concerned, yeah, sure. I mean, whatever it be, if it means they kill Khamenei, if Khamenei is killed, the Revolutionary Guard in Iran will gain even more power, and they're even more radical hardliners. So if Netanyahu is thinking that by eliminating Khamenei, they will be able to bring Iran to its knees, and Iran will, throw up its hands and say that, okay, we are done with it. We agree to whatever you say. I absolutely doubt it.
I have to come back to you, Ambassador, at this point. I think we were talking about the cost of war, and we were also speaking to, how difficult it will be for Iran to continue at it, given that its nuclear facilities are in tatters. The cost that it's incurring to continue war with Israel is also extremely high. But so far as Israel is concerned, we were playing those numbers up just a couple of seconds ago. The cost, the inflation for this war to continue would come down to about 3% of their GDP, which essentially means that even for Israel, it is not an easy battle. Iran is a formidable enemy.
It is true that the war will have extraordinarily high costs because even though the Americans may be helping with their weapons and with their aid, etc., a lot of money is going out of Israel to buy the weapons and to keep them, the Iron Dome, etc., in place. So the war is going to exact a lot of costs on both sides. But the Iranians, mind you, they have their backs to the wall, and they have been hit by the sanctions for a very, very long time. So they are accustomed to having, to bear hardships for a long time. So I think, and today after the Friday prayers, there were demonstrations in many parts of Iran against the Israeli attacks, and of course the Western powers, especially the US support to Israel. So Iran, I think, Qatar can play an important mediating role. The Europeans who are trying in Geneva to bring the Iranians to the negotiating table, they have already brought them to the negotiating table, but they must find out what is it that the Iranians would put down as a red line. That the attacks against their peaceful facilities, nuclear facilities like Natanz, that must stop. One. Two, there is no point in saying that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon when Iran is saying that we don't have a nuclear weapon at the moment.
Yeah, Ambassador, this reminds me somehow of Iraq. Come to think of it, any person who remotely knows on what really transpired with Iraq, there was supposed to be a cache of weapons that was never found. Saddam Hussein gone, war started, the entire country was left in tatters, still struggling to come back on its knees and stand on its feet, and no nuclear weapon found.
Yes. In fact, it has been now established that there's weapons of mass destruction, which I think the Britain's, Prime Minister Tony Blair and George Bush, they were putting forward as the cause for attacking Iraq. There was enough evidence on the table to say that Iraq did not have, Saddam Hussein did not have WMDs at that point of time. And of course, much later as well. So, this is all a kind of a charade that is being played out. And to say that, Khamenei will be taken out, we know where he is, we can attack him at any point of time. I think that is carrying things too far. So wisdom must prevail. There must be intermediation to find out what is it that the Iranians would accept as an honorable solution. The Iranians, there are some stray reports which are coming out saying that the Iranians would come to the negotiating table provided the Israelis stop attacking the Iranian facilities, one, and there is some kind of an apology in whatever terms it is given.
Which is highly improbable, Ambassador. I think. Thank you for being a voice of reason, but I think it's highly improbable. Major General Duta, the way we see it today, none of them are backing down. But at the same time, let's talk about the red line enforcement. Now, US, while being on wait and watch mode, continues to give aerial support to Israel and emboldens it in big possible way. When and what can lead to that red line enforcement? What, according to you, would be conducive measures that can bring a red line enforcement in the area? As Ambassador pointed out, it would include perhaps Israel apologizing, but that's not going to happen.
Sweta, the thing is, there is no hunt for a weapon of mass destruction per se as a bogey to attack Iran. Iran has been attacked by Israel because Iran says that Israel and the Jews have got no right to exist on this earth. So it's an existential threat to Israel as far as they are concerned. When a nation says that they have got no right to survive, Israel has to strike back because of the reason that Israel was attacked first by the proxies of Iran. So now the question is that what is the red line? The red line is that Iran firstly must recognize Israel as a nation and forget about his desire to finish off every Jew on this earth. So that is the first. Second is he must cap his nuclear program so that it doesn't make a nuclear device. And but I personally feel that over the years, if they have been able to make such hypersonic missiles, I'm very sure they must have already come to a weapon grade nuclear device, maybe not very many, but some of them. So be rest assured they might be having a nuclear
In
device.
which case,
Now
in
comes
which
the
case,
question that who
Major
will
General,
survive,
in which
Israel
case,
or
sir,
Iran,
attacking their nuclear
is a question
facility
of
would
this
not
and
be,
so forth.
in your assessment, in which case, if you believe that they've already devised a nuclear weapon, if they've been successfully able to devise nuclear weapon, attacking their nuclear facilities, don't you think is counterintuitive?
See, the thing is that when you want to kill me, I will come with everything I have to kill you. And that is what Israelis are doing. They have to make sure that their existence is not threatened. Now, America and the European Union, I believe the British, German, and the French, there is a meeting going to be held between the Iranians. Let's see what turns out. I personally feel they must get to some sanity. They must be sane thinking people. Forget about the rhetoric of finishing off Israel. Israel is a reality. If you want to finish them, they'll also come and finish you. And this will be a nuclear flashpoint. If a nuclear exchange takes place, it will be here in between Iran and Israel, and not between Russia, Ukraine, or anybody else. This I'm telling you. And this is the most hot spot of the world right now today. And therefore, all the sane thinking people in the world, whether American, Russians, Chinese, and Iranians themselves have to think that do they want to start a nuclear holocaust or they want to have some sanity in their brains. You know, this cannot continue. This insanity of trying to finish off one race or one country or say that you don't have a right to exist, that is no more acceptable in this current world. So I personally feel that the sanity should prevail. And I hope that the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese get together along with the European Union to drive in some sense between Israel and Iran. Both are our friendly countries as far as we are concerned in India, as Iran as well as Israel. And we wouldn't like them to be getting decimated by each other. We wish them all the best. They must survive. But sanity must come. We must, stop this rhetoric of finishing off
no two
Jewish,
thoughts about that.
every
Sanity
Jew
must
on this
prevail, and any nuclear attack, I think, is in nobody's interest. We come from a country of Gandhi, and I think all of you, I believe, firmly believe, an eye for an eye is not helpful for anybody. In this case, it's the fate of the new world order which is at stake. The Middle East, very close to Asia, perhaps India will also have to feel the repercussions if things do go astray. Ravinder Sachdev, from the looks of it, it looks like the war is going to continue, at least for a while. Where do the allies, Beijing and Moscow, come into picture? Russia and China have been relatively silent, although tacitly supporting Iran. At the same time, not doing so explicitly, perhaps fearing the larger ramifications of it, economic and otherwise as well.
Yeah, so true. I mean, it seems that for all intents and purposes, Russia and China both are staying at the periphery, right? Though making the right-sounding statements in terms of their, support for Iran. One. Secondly, talking about the Iraq weapons of mass destruction, I think we were talking to Tony Blair. Colin Powell, the Secretary of State, ran a PowerPoint presentation with the United Nations claiming that this is the evidence that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, right? Now, as of now, it seems that if you go by what the US intelligence says, and that's a split within America also emerging, by the way, between Trump and MAGA who don't war and all. Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence in March, both to the House and to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said that Iran is not producing or not going towards produce or has not enriched enough and is not pursuing an atomic bomb, let's say, or a nuclear device plan. That's the US intelligence saying hardly 3 months ago. Okay, the point is, and the other thing, where I'm little skeptical, something could happen, should happen absolutely towards peace and sanity and common sense, right? But you see, even if quote unquote some kind of a ceasefire or a pause is arranged and the Iranians come to the negotiating table, I mean, Iran would have to give up something. It'll be the Iranians who will have to kind of, bend down a bit. But it will leave Netanyahu and Israel's project unfinished. Because even if now Iran is stopped, what matters is after 5 years, it will again revive the program. If
Right.
that is what the Iranians or Israelis believe in. So Israel this time round has to go the full hill. And especially Netanyahu, for him, it's a lifetime
Absolutely.
project. He will never again have this chance to leave a legacy for his nation as being the savior of
Can't
the
leave
Jewish
it
race.
unfinished. He's calling it a forever war. He can't leave it unfinished. But this is
He
going to
cannot.
be his legacy. He's the man who is responsible for killing Hamas leaders, for finishing Houthis, for killing majority of militia in the Middle East. So perhaps this is going to be it for him. His legacy would be to finish this war, to see it to the hilt. But I have to ask you, V.K. Dutta, Major General, this is also a situation, as you said, that Israel continues to feel threatened by Iran. It may be developing nuclear weapon, it may be using it for domestic purposes, for civilian use. Nobody knows for sure because there's no proof of it. But at the same time, with Israel now escalating it and not backing down, I believe there has to be a pause. And if there has to be a pause, it has to be from Israeli side.
Yes, Shweta, see, the thing is, this particular round was not started by Israel. It was instigated by Iran through the proxies, and that is the thing culminating now into this one-to-one assault on each other. Now the thing is that
If
we
they finish
have
the
to make
proxies,
sure that
sir, what's
there
the
is
point
zero
of now
tolerance
hitting
to
the nuclear
terrorism.
sites?
See, zero tolerance to terrorism, and we have also faced terror under a nuclear umbrella by Pakistan. Pakistan kept on threatening India that mere paas bomb hai. That kind of a nonsense. And if a country has got a nuclear device and then it is supporting terrorism and attacking another country by proxy, that is not acceptable in the world. And without a nuclear device terror like what we face between India and Pakistan, if Iran had a nuclear device and that under the umbrella of a nuclear device, terrorist attack are carried out against Israel, it will become more threatening. So the thing is that the world has to acknowledge
Where
that
does it
there
end?
should not be nobody
In
with
your
a nuclear
assessment,
device
Major
who
General,
gets
you've
involved
served in the
terrorism.
area. You've served in the area, sir. In your assessment, where does it really end? Where do you draw the line?
See, the thing is that, again, I'm just saying the powers that be, whether it's the Americans, the Russians, or the Chinese, they have to drive in logic in the head of Iran that you can't support terrorism under a nuclear umbrella or without a nuclear umbrella. You have to make sure that there is zero tolerance to terrorism all over the world. It's not that India. All those countries who have faced terrorism, they know what is the meaning of that. So therefore, any country who supports terrorism should be neutralized and brought down to the knees to make sure that they don't support terrorism in the world. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, if Iran accepts, okay, fine, no more supporting terrorists, no more asymmetric warfare, no proxy warfare, we'll talk like, educated and sane people in this world to make sure that the earth and the world rises together and there's prosperity and homogeneity. Only then, you cannot have rabid nations in this world trying to destabilize another area or a location. So therefore, now it's a question. It's a question mark. I may be wrong. Somebody may say, no, Israel has been, doing against the Palestinians. You have to understand. You have to let people live.
All right.
When this thing happened on 7th October...
I mean, you have to let people live both sides. I believe, Ambassador, you've got to let people live on both the sides. And I believe the general civilian, the population that has very little to do with war is often the casualty of war. Ambassador Jandas, Gupta, if the US were to tomorrow join the war, what are we looking at? Are we looking at this war finishing once and for over? And in how many days? And what would that mean for Iran as far as its current regime is concerned?
Well, as the general was mentioning, of course, air superiority will lead to widespread destruction of Iranian assets. But the Iranians are proud people. They have a history stretching back to 3,000 years or more. They are not going to surrender. They are not going to give up. So, their assets may be decimated, the Khamenei may be killed, but the Iranians will continue fighting.
All right.
And no country will be able to dominate. In Iraq, see what has happened. In Libya, what has happened. In Syria,
Absolutely.
what has happened. The US intervention has not led to a single party government or, a single source of power. So that is what, there will be chaos. So that is what needs to be avoided. And the second point I wanted to make is that, of course, I take the point that the general is making, but Israel is supposed to have made surreptitiously, has 90 or so nuclear warheads. It is not a signatory to the non-proliferation treaty. So it also can't, you have strict controls over Iran so that they don't develop nuclear weapons. But at the same time, the other side can't keep threatening, that we will use nuclear weapons and decimate, Iran. So it has to be a kind of a negotiated settlement, and wisdom has to prevail. Whosoever has dominance over one or the other country has to exercise that dominance for the global good.
Global good, and that would only be ensured if perhaps the parties come and sit at the table, the possibility of which is eluding us at the moment. But that's all we have on the show today. Ambassador Jandas Gupta, Major General V.K. Datta, as well as Robinder Sachdev. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for taking time out, for putting this in perspective. We continue to track the latest emerging from Iran and Israel. The war entered its 8th day with no signs of pausing anytime soon. It continues unabated. Missile strikes happening as we speak, and without a US's intervention likely to continue for a few more days now until either one of them runs out of fuel.